Hey everyone, I'm Liz Croft, the founder of Mental.SESH, and we're here doing a FaceTime with Mental.SESH, our new series, and we're talking all things creative, entertainer, athlete, mental health. And today we're sitting down with Yaz. And if you don't know Yaz, then I don't know what planet you live on, because she is like the queen of fits and lifestyle on TikTok, Instagram. She's doing it and she's making it look great. But I'm curious, like, I know you've talked in the past and I've seen it on TikTok, just like your story of how you started in like the finance world, right? Like you were in finance before, and then eventually, and you've shared quite a few different stories of just like the bullshit that you've dealt with being in that environment, and then eventually making that transition into being a full-time content creator. I kind of know that feeling a little bit, because when I was working in the nonprofit space as a therapist, in the therapist world, a lot of therapists didn't understand what the hell I was doing, like outside of therapy. And I would show up to work in like, you know, sneakers or like whatever fits I was wearing, because I worked with kids, and my colleagues would like yell at me about my outfits. They would kind of like give me weird looks. And it kind of felt for a while that I was like living in this double like world of like who I was as a therapist and then who I was online. I'm curious, like, did you have any experiences like that? What was, you know, your experience just making that transition into full-time, you know, entrepreneur world, and how was that for you? Because that's a big step to take.
Yeah, so I started working in finance right out of university, but it was the midst of COVID. So I was, working from my shoebox of a condo in Toronto and didn't have that traditional face-to-face experience, but was working in capital markets. So I was spending so much time at home. And obviously that was kind of the rise of TikTok and social media. I loved the idea of taking videos of everything that I was doing on a daily basis, the mundane little things, and just trying to romanticize it to the best of my ability. So I started doing that. And because I was contained in that work from home environment, it seemed so harmless. And then the world picked back up. We went back into the office. I was back working on Bay Street, and things were a lot different in terms of then, posting online every day and interacting with colleagues. And when my videos started to go viral, and people scrolling on their phones at lunch hour and seeing that, and the duality of me trying to be this professional in a work environment, being taken seriously, only one of 10 women in a company. And then I'm also, talking about my favorite makeup products. They're like, who is this girl? What is she doing? And I don't take her seriously.
Yeah. It's so interesting because like when you think of who we are as people, we have so many facets to our identity, right? And like you can very much be someone who works in finance that also loves skincare and makeup and like beauty as an industry. But like when you're in the like it's so the word, I guess the word I'm trying, like it's not accepted, you know, in certain industries when you're in, like people have a really hard time conceptualizing that like we are multifaceted individuals, and like just because, you know, you're someone in finance and you like these other things, like that's okay, but it also feels very alienating to like be that person. And I also like how you mentioned starting during COVID when we were very alienated from everything outside. It's a kind of a good way to form connection, you know, be around other, like be connected with other people. But I don't know if it was like this for you. Like it kind of starts, at least for me, it started as like just a form of creative expression. Like it was fun. And now like it being a job, like, do you view it differently now that it is like your job versus like more of like a fun creative outlet? Like where does that boundary ever, like how does it blend?
I feel like there was 3 phases of it. I think that the time that I took myself the most seriously on social media was actually before it ever was something as a creative outlet for me. It was the way I was going to be perceived by the entire world. And I felt like these few photos that I had on my social media made up who I was as a person. And then as I started to post more and, just had little, I don't know, what's the word I'm looking for? I just had little ways to express myself, and it was really differentiated in between, outfits and makeup and just my daily routine. I actually felt more comfortable with that. And then I got a little bit of hate. Then I started to get people's opinions on it, which is something that, usually you're just imagining people thinking things, but people are actually saying it out loud to you.
Yeah.
And that was a hard pill to swallow. Now that I'm doing it as my full-time job and I've been in it for like a year and a half, I realized that if I continued to care what people said or thought about me and I took it that seriously, then it wasn't a job. It was going to become my entire persona. And I
Mhm.
think now I care the least about social media than I have the entire time.
Yeah. How do you deal with like the hate and just like the negativity? Because like it really is, it's a cesspool sometimes. People feel that they have this like extra superpower because they're behind a screen and they feel they can say whatever they want to whoever. But those words still really hurt. Like they can be hurtful, and it doesn't feel good to get that kind of, those kind of comments on your posts.
No, I think it never feels good, but I think about, what area of someone's life they must be in to be coming at someone with that much negativity over a screen. I
Mhm.
think about the times that, I would see something online and the first thing that would come into my head would be negative. Chances are I wasn't happy in my life and that's the direction it was coming from. So I think that I just take it all with a grain of salt, maybe call it delusion, but I think that you have to be so confident and secure with yourself to just be able to brush off. And there's still going to be those days where, I'm insecure, I'm not my most confident, but then remembering, okay, it's someone's bad day. I don't need to take what they're saying with 5 seconds of their day to heart.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And there's a lot of projection, a lot of displacement of like people's emotions online. And it's so true. What you're saying is like people feel that way, maybe about their own lives, about themselves, about like their own situations they might be in, and it's easier and it's, an unhelpful coping and defense mechanism to go online and try and bring someone else down, because that's a quick fix. You get like a quick adrenaline rush or dopamine hit by doing that. But it kind of creates this like vicious cycle where when you're someone who is a troll online, you're feeding off of the negativity and getting reinforced by that, rather than just like looking inward and being like, all right, what is it that's going on that's creating this emotion for me, and what do I need to do about it? And doing the work is actually doing that and taking that time and working on yourself. But that doesn't create the quick fix, like the quick hits of dopamine. It takes a lot more time to see the end result. So it is a vicious cycle. And it's interesting because I think too, like social media today, I don't know if you see this a lot on TikTok, but like I see so much dialogue around like being relatable, really relatability. Like, it's not just about fashion and skincare. It's like who you are as a human. Alex Earl being a good example of that. I guess like everyone says how she's so relatable, all opinions aside. But it's interesting because when you do start to pull the curtain back and stop with the highlight reel of social media, and trying to be your true, honest, authentic self and showing, that's what I would say is relatable, because we're not all perfect people. We all fuck up. We all have like our own issues that we are dealing with as human beings. But then you're also subject to the opinions of others in the process of that. So it's kind of this double-edged sword where like, what does it even mean to be relatable? How, like, what does that look like for you? What are your thoughts in general, just on like relatability on social media?
I think that this idea of relatability is hard because it's so specific to what someone is going through in their own life and how they're sharing it and perceiving that image online. That's still probably not the full picture of everything that they're going through, but if it looks like the image that you want to see, you'll accept that as being their reality. I just think that that gets really destructive because you think all of these people are showing you all of their cards online, when in reality, there's still so much more that people are going through behind the screen. And then for a lot of people's audiences, it just gives them this negative idea that their lives are so perfect. If that's the worst thing that they're going through and they're sharing it on the screen, then why am I so damaged and having to isolate myself and not sharing all of this online.
Yeah.
And then also, I feel like there's this competition, like who can share the most, who can, let their guard down the most and just kind of like share it all for views. I think that there also is a lot of benefit and value in working on things outside of social media and without other people's opinions and doing that work rather than getting sometimes the validation or
Mhm.
verification that you need
Yeah.
online too.
Yeah, no, you're spot on. It's similar to like going to an art gallery and looking at a piece and everyone having their own perception of what that artwork represents, whereas like the artist has, their own actual idea of where that came from, but it's all subjective as to like what goes on in your own personal life, what your experiences look like, and then how you're perceiving someone, something in the world around you based on your own life. And it's interesting because I think too with the relatability, people are really pushing for this like positive relatability where it's like, oh, I like the same music, I like the same clothes, like all the like surface level like fun stuff. But I also think a really big piece of being relatable is the real raw like challenging things to show on social media that we really don't see too much of, like just our own personal issues. Like, for example, the stress I deal with at times of like being married and like trying to balance like married life and friendships and like traveling and having a puppy. I don't know. I don't share any of that. And like I always reflect, but I'm like, how can we I don't know, how can we be more relatable as humans online and at the same time find the balance between keeping things private? And I don't think there's any like rhyme or reason to it. It's just what works for you. But yeah, I don't know. So anyway, going off of relatability, who are some, people, I guess like when you first started out, like did you ever get into the trap of like comparing yourself on social media, and like how do you navigate that, or what advice would you give to people like up and coming falling into that trap of maybe comparing themselves to others or wanting to like try and be relatable because this person's popping off for their type of content versus not?
I feel so comfortable saying it now because I'm so far removed from that version of myself. But yeah, I used to sit there and be like, I'm working so hard. I'm doing all of this, but they're doing this and they're getting this and these opportunities that I'm not get. Why am I not getting this? How do I make myself better? I suck. I should just give up. Like, I think that I realized that if I continued to go through every day with that mentality and that it was always like a quantitative benchmark that I was setting for myself that I was never meeting. And, I'd sit down with my boyfriend and I'd be like, oh, like I just wish I got here. And he's like, I remember when your goal was that thing and you were so excited and you were going to be so happy when you got there and you're still not. So I can guarantee you're not going to be happy when you get there either.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that I had to analyze that if I wanted to keep going, I couldn't constantly be disappointed with myself or wanting more for myself. I also had to learn how to celebrate where I was at and that everyone's journey is so different. No one is starting a race at the same point and no one also even has the same finish line. So when you can look at it that way, it just becomes freeing and you can support people and be so excited for everyone else in your life's growth and not think that that's ever going to hinder your own.
Yeah, I completely agree. I experience that often, even sometimes still, like within mental health, like just feeling frustrated over, some things I see online, and it's hard to navigate. I think it's also part of being human, like we are social creatures, and that's kind of how our brains are operated, to just compare ourselves in the world to others and where we are. But when you have a world like social media that is very curated, that like we're comparing our IRLs to people's URLs, and we're taking all the lows of our lows and like looking at the highs of the highs and like comparing apples to oranges, which is not the case, in reality. But I think too, like something I noticed with a lot of like entrepreneurs, freelancers who have their own business, like it's really hard for us to celebrate the small victories because there is that like anxiety that comes up of like, how are we going to get the next opportunity to sustain? And it's like, just for like safety, like we have this innate sense of like wanting to feel secure, wanting to feel safe, whether that's like around certain people, financial reasons, like we need to make sure our basic needs are met. And when you're running your own business, like everything's like in your hands to make sure that that is happening. And that is a scary thing. So it's really hard to be able to celebrate where you're at in the moment, but then not like start thinking, okay, well, what's next? What else do I have lined up that I can create this sense of security for myself? How do you, like, what ways are you kind of slowing down to make sure you're celebrating the small victories along the way? Because that's really hard to do.
It's really hard. And I'll say I'm still not perfect at sitting down and celebrating and taking that moment to like relish in what I have.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that I've learned that there's a lot of beauty in when you're having those highs, especially related to what my career is on social media, getting off of it, like literally just stepping away from it rather than trying to, ride this victory out and be so focused on what's coming next. It's just kind of like sitting down and seeing where I'm at with my own life that's offline and making sure that I'm prioritizing also like my mental health and actually going to the gym and making meals, because I find that a lot of the times those things are what I'm compromising.
Mm-hmm.
So I think lately I've just been trying to find that balance. If I focus on work, for a full week, make sure that I'm giving myself a few days to actually reset, because that's when I think that I'm able to actually be proud of myself, is when I get off of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And I think too, like emphasizing the importance of just like your relationships outside of social media. Like one of my best friends works in like pharmaceutical advertising. And to be honest, like it's so fucking humbling to be around her, because she'll just like call me out when my ego is doing its thing. And she's like, humble yourself, like chill the fuck out. She'll like make fun of me. And it's good because it's just nice to know that like when we're in a world where like social media is your job, you can be surrounded by a lot of, ego at times and a lot of different personalities. And what does your like support circle kind of look like? How do those people help you stay grounded and, remember like who you are outside of your online presence?
Oh my God. One of my best friends is currently doing her PhD in psychology.
Oh yeah.
I am getting my head shrunk on a daily basis, and I'm so appreciative of that. But I have all of my same, circle from my hometown that I communicate with on a daily basis, and my dad, who I talk to like 5 times a day. I think that it's so important to keep those relationships at the forefront. Obviously, I also am really thankful I made one of my best friends through social media as well, but that's rare.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that finding that balance in your support system, no matter what your career is like essential. For me, it's literally stepping away from the city. Like I always look at the city as where I do social media and where I work. And I'll get on the train and I'll go home and I'll spend a few days with my hometown friends where none of that stuff matters. We never bring our phones out at the table. We'll just go down and sit down for dinner. And it's, like you said, it's the most humbling thing ever, because it's real life, and you get so caught up in what's going on online, especially I feel like I do in Toronto.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really grounding, to just like bring yourself back into like the real world and like check in with people's lives, like what they're doing, what they're excited about, what's going on, like, and you start to realize like what really matters, like what is really of importance and value in your life. And it's hard. It's like you're kind of balancing two worlds at some points in time, and trying to, I don't know if you've experienced this, but like trying to just decipher like who, after you have a certain level of following on social media, you meet a lot of people, and like you said, it's hard to find like friendships online, but like also it's hard to navigate like who really wants to be your friend to get to know you as a person, and who wants to be like associated with you because of who you are, what like the social, presentation of you. And that, for me personally, like I've, been through a lot of just different situations where like I had a person I was friends with at one point and had come to learn that she had like purchased a bot that was like shadowing my account. And like, I only learned this because she was like, friends from college who I haven't spoken to in like years were like, hey, why is this person like leaving generic emoji comments? I see you're friends with her. So I was like, wait, huh? And I looked into it and I like learned, and I'm like, that is really shitty. Like, I was just like, why
What
would
does that mean? Was it like negative? Like, was
it
she
was just
leaving?
like, you were she was like my friend, but like she was paying for this service to basically like bite off of like attack my, like go at my followers to like grow her own following, and like kind of, it was like leaving spammy comments and shit like that. And it was like, but I felt like disrespected in a way. Like, it just felt very invasive. I'm like, I thought we were friends on like a personal level, and you had to bring like this weird like leechy behavior into it, where it's like, it's not that deep. Like, you don't need to like, do that kind of stuff. So like, it's hard to trust. Like, for me, I have a really big issue with just like meeting new people and letting my guard down and letting them into like my inner circle of friends, or like bringing people along to certain events or whatever, because I just don't know, like, are you really trying to be my friend and like get to know me, or do you just want like access to certain things? And I've become jaded, and I think like now in my 30s, like I'm a lot more content with just having a very small group of people. But when I was in my 20s, like I thought it was so important to have like a huge network of friends and like be out and about with all these different people. And I've come to learn that like that's a lot more stressful than just keeping it really small and tight. So I don't know. Do you experience that at all?
I feel like my biggest thing is I have had like crippling social anxiety since I was 16. And getting into this industry, there is such an expectation to constantly be going to these events and networking with people. You also don't always get a +1, which should be okay. But for someone like myself, I can't walk in there on my own, and I can't make, little conversations and bounce around a room. That's not who I am to my core. And I am so comfortable with that now. But when it's taking away from work opportunities, or I feel like I'm disservicing myself, I find myself trying to fight who I am and what I'm supposed to be because of that.
I think in those kind of like social situations, I remember for myself, I probably look like such a, I don't know if I can say it, like such a bitch sometimes, because I'm just scared. There's just a million things going on in my head. I'm freaking out in the corner, but people are probably like, "Oh, she thinks that she's better than everyone else." No, I literally think I am not meant to be there. So I try to remember in those social situations, especially when I'm meeting people in this industry, when I see someone else that looks like that, I'm like, maybe we're just on the same playing field here, and maybe you're also scared. And those are the times when I've actually been able to work myself up and go say hi to someone, because I think if they're possibly going through the same thought process I am, I would just want a friend. But yeah, there is a double-edged sword, because there are a lot of people in this industry that want a leg up and will use people. I always have seen the best in people. I have a really hard time just accepting that some people do not have good intentions. So I've always just tried to be like, no, like maybe it's me. I must be the one who's doing something wrong in that situation. But at the end of the day, I've learned sometimes you have to let those people go, not try to continue that relationship. You don't need to tell yourself that you just need to do more work to make it okay and, make the friendship. I've just learned you can be cordial with people without needing anything to be friendly.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is, just in general, like a good thing to remember, like, and being able to just go up to someone and say hi. I don't know, like for me, COVID really fucked me up with that. Like, I have really bad social anxiety too. And like KJ is my witness, like she will always ask for a +1 for events for me, because I won't go unless I don't have a +1. And yeah, like just, it's intimidating. Even worse after COVID, to like go up to people and just say hi. And that's wild. Like, it's really wild in hindsight to think like how we create these own narratives in our minds before we even just give someone the chance to. That's anxiety, that's what that is. Okay. last two questions. What does, self-care in general just look like for you? What way do you go to therapy? Do you have a coach? Like, what's your self-care routine looking like?
I did therapy for a long time. I will admit it's something that I want to find someone in the city. When I moved, that was something that kind of got lost in translation, especially during COVID. But more recently, self-care for me looks like having a workout routine, like a regimen that I feel good about, actually like caring about what I'm putting into my body, because I just realized that relationship is so important, especially with food. Um, Taking time off of social media, like creating a structure for myself in a day that's not overworking myself, but also, maintaining a level of professionality, and just hanging out with my friends, like having a really good core circle of people that I push myself to continue those relationships with because they build me up and vice versa. Um, and then skincare, like all the little girly things. I love just being alone in my home, ordering some sushi, doing a face mask, and just watching some garbage on Netflix. But there's different ways that it looks, I guess.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's the thing is like, you go online and you see self-care. It's usually the same old like four things you see people preaching for self-care, but it really is just like knowing yourself, knowing what works for you. And anything can really be self-care as long as it's not, a potentially harmful activity. But like literally having a sushi night to yourself, like that is self-care. It's just listening to your body and not pushing it to do things that it doesn't want or need to do in that moment. So good for you. All right, last question. What is a piece of advice you would give to someone who, looks up to you, wants to kind of get into the same or similar career path as you? How would you kind of mentor them? What would you tell them?
Mm, I think that the most important thing is to not take yourself so seriously. I think that if you want to get into this, you need to know that you're going to continue to grow while you're posting or while you're creating whatever your outlet is. You're not going to be perfect from the start. I think that I have grown up being such a type A person who was always waiting for the right opportunity. I'm going to feel ready tomorrow, or things are going to look great when I move to this place, or whatever it may be. I think that you need to out of that headspace, because I feel get the confidence to start. I probably wasn't confident. And when I look back at that version of myself, I wasn't. But being able to actually see all of that growth online, I'm so happy that I've documented it all. So even if you're just doing it for yourself at first,
Mhm.
create, because you're holding yourself back from an opportunity to just document your growth through life. And if something bigger comes of it, great. But as long as that's not the inherent goal that you have out of being on social media or doing whatever pursuit you want to, then you're going to be happy and you're going to feel fulfilled from it.
Yeah, absolutely. Doing it for yourself. I love that because that, really is what we should be doing it for. We shouldn't be doing anything for anyone else unless it's like a nice
Yeah.
gesture. But
Unless
other
it's getting
than
some coffee.
yeah, absolutely. Cool. Well, thank you so much for your time today. And what's on the radar? What do you have coming up? Any exciting projects? Anything you're working on? And also let the people know where they can find you if they want to connect.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This was such a great conversation. I'm currently working on a little bit of a wellness challenge that kind of encapsulates all of the aspects of self-care that I've been incorporating into my life that, I'm also getting your guidance on, which is incredible. And I'm on TikTok, I'm on Instagram, at Yaz Ghotb. So yeah, I'd love to see you there.
Yeah, follow her on TikTok, Instagram. Her content's great. And she is like the Gen Z girly. I love it. And it's very positive, real, and yeah, you're a good person to follow. So
Thanks, Liz. How are you?
yeah, I'll try. I don't know. I just had a birthday party for my dog. So wait till you hit 30. That's
I love that.
yeah.